right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to another stream of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. So, we have read quite a bit so far into this book. So, I'm going to do just a brief little synopsis if you're new here and you haven't been following the story with us so far. So, we are reading about the life of Jane Eyre. So, Jane Eyre was a girl who was sent away to school, and she ended up gaining um, a lot of intelligence and a lot of smarts, and she became a teacher. And then she decided to become a governess. So she works at a place called Thornfield Hall, and she has one pupil named Adele. And Adele is the charge slash ward of Mr. Rochester. And Mr. Rochester is a man who is 38, and Jane is 18. Jane has slowly started to really like Mr. Rochester. She's grown a little bit attached to him in a way. And she knows that she can never really be with him because of her status and who she is. And he's a gentleman, he's got a lot of money and he's got a lot of backing on a lot of things. So for her, she realizes it's something that could never be, but she's like secretly, she seems to be really pining for him. And what happened most recently is that Mr. Rochester threw a party and she was told to be there. So she just kind of sat off to the side and she heard about the guests talk about how horrible governesses are and all this and all that. And Jane's just kind of internalizing that as like, wow, I'm really not great, I guess. And so she leaves the party because she was there for the time that she needed to be, and she was quiet, didn't really say anything. And Mr. Rochester comes up to her and he's like, you didn't say anything to me this entire night. What's going on? And she's like, I'm tired, and, that's kind of how it is. And, there's just this tension you could feel between the two of them because you can tell that, he very much enjoys her company and she also enjoys his company. There's a part where she was talking about him and seeing him across the room and how much she was just kind of really transfixed on him and really talking about him as if, he were her husband or someone that she deeply loved. And it was kind of moving in a way. So that kind of happened and the party ended and she went to bed. So that's where we left off. And I'm curious to see where things go from here. And does this turn into a whirlwind romance? Are we going to get the little romance we all need? And yeah, so that's just kind of where we are right now and what happened. So let's continue on and see where the story progresses. Chapter 18. Merry days these were at Thornfield Hall, and busy days too. How different from the first 3 months of stillness, monotony, and solitude that I had passed beneath its roof. All sad feelings seemed now driven from the house, all gloomy associations forgotten. There was life everywhere, movement all day long. You could not now traverse the gallery, once so hushed, nor enter the front chambers, once so tenantless, without encountering a smart lady's maid or a dandy valet. The kitchen, the butler's pantry, the servants' hall, the entrance hall were equally alive, and the saloons were only left void and still when the blue sky and halcyon sunshine of the genial spring summer called their occupants out into the grounds. Even when that weather was broken and continuous rain set in for some days, no damp seemed cast over enjoyment. Indoor amusements only became more lively and varied, in consequence of the top put to outdoor gaiety. I wondered what they were going to do the first evening of a change of entertainment was proposed. They spoke of playing charades, but in my ignorance I did not understand the term. The servants were called in, and the dining-room tables were wheeled away, the lights otherwise disposed, the chairs placed in a semicircle opposite the arch. While Mr. Rochester and the other gentlemen directed these alterations, the ladies were running up and down stairs, ringing for their maids. Mrs. Fairfax was summoned to give information respecting the resources of the house in shawls, dresses, draperies of any kind, and certain wardrobes of the third story were ransacked, and their contents in the shape of brocaded and hooped petticoats, satin sacques, black modes, lace lappets, and the such, were brought down in armfuls by the abigails. Then a selection was made, and such things were chosen and were carried to the boudoir within the drawing-room. Meantime, Mr. Rochester had again summoned the ladies around him, and was selecting certain of their number to be of his party. "Miss Ingram is mine, of course," he said. Afterwards he named the two Mrs. Eshton and Mrs. Dent. He looked at me, and then I happened to be near him, as if I had been fastening the clasp of Mrs. Dent's bracelet, which I had got loose. "Will you play?" he asked. I shook my head. He did not insist, which I rather feared that he would have done. He allowed me to return quietly to my usual seat. He and his aides now withdrew behind the curtain. The other party, which was headed by Colonel Dent, sat down on the crescent of the chairs. One of the gentlemen, Mr. Eshton, observing me, seemed to propose that I should be asked to join them, but Lady Ingram instantly negated that notion. "No," I heard her say, "she looks too stupid for any game of the sort." Ere long a bell tinkled, and the curtain drew up. Within the arch, the bulky figure of Sir George Lynn, whom Mr. Rochester had likewise chosen, was seen enveloped in a white sheet. Before him and on a table lay open a large book, and at his side stood Amy Eshton, draped in Mr. Rochester's cloak, and holding a book in her hand. Somebody unseen rang the bell merrily. Then Adele bounded forward, scattering around the contents of a basket of flowers that she had carried on her arm. Then appeared the magnificent figure of Miss Ingram, clad in white, a long veil on her head, and a wreath of roses around her brow. By her side walked Mr. Rochester, and together they drew near the table. They knelt, while Mrs. Dent and Louisa Eshton, dressed also in white, took up their stations behind them. A ceremony followed in a dumb show, in which it was easy to recognize the pantomime of a marriage. At its termination, Colonel Dent and his party consulted in whispers for 2 minutes, when the colonel called out, and then Mr. Rochester bellowed, "Bride!" and then the curtain fell. A considerable interval lapsed before it again rose. A second rising displayed a more elaborately prepared scene than the last. The drawing-room, as I have once before observed, was raised in 2 steps above the dining-room, and on the top of the upper step, placed a yard or 2 back within the room, appeared a large marble basin, which I recognized as an ornament of the conservatory, where it usually stood, surrounded by exotics and tenanted by goldfish, and whence it must have become transported with some trouble on account of its size and weight. Seated on the carpet by the side of its basin was seen Mr. Rochester, costumed in shawls and with a turban on his head. His dark eyes and swarthy grin and Paynim features suited the costume exactly. He looked the very model of an Eastern emir, an agent or a victim of the bowstring. Presently he advanced into the view of Miss Ingram, and she too was attired in Oriental fashion, a crimson scarf tied sash-like around her waist, an embroidered handkerchief knotted about her temples. Her beautifully molded arms were bare, one of them upraised in the act of supporting a pitcher, and poised gracefully on her head. Both her cast of form and feature, her complexion and her general air, suggested the idea of some Israelite princess of some patriarchal day, and such was doubtless the character that she intended to represent. She approached the basin and bent over it as if to fill her pitcher. She again lifted it to her head. The personage on the well brink now seemed to accost her, to make some request. She hastened then and let down her pitcher on her hand and gave him a drink, and from the bosom of his robe he then produced a casket, opened it, and showed a magnificent set of bracelets and earrings. She acted astonished and showed admiration. Kneeling, he laid the treasure at her feet. Incredulously, there was delight, and it was expressed by her looks and gestures. The stranger fastened the bracelets on her arms and the rings in her ears. It was Eleazar and Rebecca, The camels only were wanting. The divining party again laid their heads together. Apparently, they could not agree about the word or syllable the scene illustrated. Colonel Dent, their spokesman, demanded the tableau of the whole, whereupon the whole curtain again descended. On its third rising, only a portion of the drawing-room was disclosed, the rest being concealed by a screen, and hung with some sort of dark and coarse drapery. The marble basin was removed, and in its place stood a deal table and a kitchen chair. These objects were visible by a very dim light proceeding from a horn lantern, the wax candles being all extinguished. Amidst this sordid scene sat a man with his clenched hands resting on his knees, and his eyes bent on the ground. I knew Mr. Rochester, though the begrimed face, the disordered dress, the desperate and the scowling countenance, the rough and bristling hair might well have disguised him. As he moved, a chain clanked to his wrists and were attached to fetters. "Bridewell!" exclaimed Colonel Dent, and the charade was solved, a sufficient interval having elapsed for the performers to resume their ordinary costume. They re-entered the dining-room. Mr. Rochester led in Miss Ingram. She was complimenting him on his acting. "Do you know," she said, "that of the 3 characters, I liked you in that last one best. Oh, and you but lived a few years earlier. What a gallant gentleman highwayman you would have made." Is all the soot washed from my face?" he asked, turning towards her. "Alas, yes. There's more the pity. Nothing could be more becoming to your complexion than that ruffian's rouge." "Ah, you would like the hero of the road, then?" "An English hero of the road would be the next best thing to an Italian bandit. And that could only be surpassed by a Levantine pirate." "Well, whatever I am, remember, you are my wife. We are married an hour since, and in the presence of all these witnesses." She giggled, and her color rose. "Now, Dent," continued Mr. Rochester, "it is your turn." And as the party withdrew, he and his band took the vacated seats. Miss Ingram placed herself at her leader's right hand. The other diviners filled the chairs on each side of him and her. I did not now watch the actors. I no longer waited with interest for the curtain to rise. My attention was absorbed by the spectators, my eyes erewhile fixed on that arch, and were now irresistibly attracted to the semicircle of chairs. What charade Colonel Dent and his party played, that word they chose, how they acquitted themselves, I no longer remember, but I still see the constellation which followed each scene. I see Mr. Rochester turn to Miss Ingram, and Miss Ingram to him. I see her incline her head towards him, till the jetty curls almost touch his shoulder, and the wave against his cheek. I hear their mutual whisperings. I recall their interchanged glances, and something even of the feeling roused by the spectacle returns in memory at this moment. I have told you, reader, that I had learnt to love Mr. Rochester. I could not unlove him, would withdraw it instantly from an object too mean to merit observation. I could not unlove him, because I felt sure that he would soon marry this very lady, because I read daily in her proud security and his intentions respecting her, that because I witnessed hourly in him of a style of courtship which, if careless in choosing rather to be sought than to seek, was yet, in its very carelessness, was captivating, and in its very pride, irresistible. There was nothing to cool or banish love in these circumstances, though much to create despair. Much, too, you will think, reader, to engender jealousy. If a woman in my position could presume to be jealous of a woman in Miss Ingram's. But I was not jealous, or very rarely so. The nature of the pain that I suffered could not be explained by that word. Miss Ingram was a mark beneath jealousy. She was too inferior to excite the feeling. Parting the seeming paradox, I mean what I say. She was very showy, but she was not genuine. She had a fine person and many brilliant attainments, but her mind was poor. Her heart was barren by nature. Nothing bloomed spontaneously on that soil. No unforced natural fruit delighted by its freshness. She was not good. She was not original. She used to repeat sounding phrases from books. She never offered nor had an opinion of her own. She advocated a high tone of sentiment, but she did not know the sensations of sympathy and pity. Tenderness and truth were not in her. Too often she betrayed this, by the undue vent that she gave to a spiteful antipathy that she had conceived against little Adele, pushing her away with some tumultuous epithet that she happened to approach her, sometimes ordering her from the room, and always treating her with coldness and acrimony. Other eyes besides mine watched these manifestations of character, watched them closely, keenly, shrewdly. Yes, the future bridegroom, Mr. Rochester himself, exercised over his intended a ceaseless surveillance, and it was from this sagacity, this guardedness of his, this perfect clear consciousness of his fair one's defects, this obvious absence of passion in his sentiments towards her, that my ever-torturing pain rose. I saw he was going to marry her, for family perhaps, and perhaps for political reasons, because her rank and connections suited him. I felt that he had not given her his love, and that her qualifications were ill-adapted to win from him that treasure. This was the point. This was where the nerve had touched and teased. This was where the fever sustained and fed. She could not charm him. If she had managed the victory at once, and he had yielded and sincerely laid his heart at her feet, I should have been covered and turned to the wall and have died to them. If Miss Ingram had been a good and noble woman, endowed with force, fervor, kindness, and sense, I should have one vital struggle with two tigers, jealousy and despair. Then, my heart torn out and devoured, I should have admired her, acknowledged her existence, and been quiet for the rest of my days. And the more absolute her superiority, the deeper would have been my admiration, the more truly tranquil my quiescence. But, as matters really stood, to watch Miss Ingram's efforts at fascinating Mr. Rochester, to witness their repeated failure, her unconsciousness that did fail, vainly fancying that each shaft launched hit the mark, and infatuatedly pluming herself on success, when her pride and self-complacency repelled further and further what she wished to allure. To witness this was to be at once under ceaseless excitation and ruthless restraint, because when she failed, I saw how she might have succeeded. Arrows that continually glanced off from Mr. Rochester's breast and fell harmlessly at his feet, might I knew if a shot by a surer hand would have been quivered keen in his proud heart, and have called love into his stern eye, the softness into his sardonic face, or better still, without weapons, a silent conquest might have been won. Why can she not influence him more, when she is privileged to draw him so near? I thought to myself. Surely she cannot like him, and not like him with true affection, and if she did not coin her smile so lavishly, and flash her glances so unremittingly, and manufacture airs so elaborate, and graces so multitudinous, that it seems to me that she might, by merely sitting quietly at his side, saying little and looking less, get nigher at his heart. I have seen in his face a far different expression from that which hardens it now, while she is so vivaciously accosting him. But then it came of itself. It was not elicited by meritorious arts and calculated maneuvers, and one had but to accept it to answer that he asked without pretension, to address him when needful without grimace, and it increased and grew kinder and more genial, and warmed like a festering sunbeam. How will she manage to please him when they are married? I do not think she will manage it, and yet might it be managed, and his wife she might be, oh, I verily believe, and be the veriest happiest woman the sun shines on. I have not yet said anything condemnatory of Mr. Rochester's project of marrying for interest or connection. It surprised me when I first discovered that such was his intention. I had thought him a man unlikely to be influenced by motives so commonplace in his choice of a wife. But the longer I considered the position and the education of the parties, the less that I felt justified in judging and blaming either him or Miss Ingram for acting in conformity to ideas and principles instilled into them, and doubtless from their childhood. All their class held these principles. I suppose, then, that they had reasons for holding them such as I could not fathom. It seemed to me that, were I a gentleman like him, I would have to take my bosom only such a wife that I could love. But the very obviousness of the advantages to my husband's own happiness offered by this plan convinced me that there must be arguments against the general adoption of which I was quite ignorant. Otherwise, I felt sure of all the world would act as if I wished it to act. But in other points, as well as this, I was growing very lenient to my master. I was forgetting all his faults, for which I had once kept a sharp lookout. It had been formerly my endeavor to study all sides of his character, to take the bad with the good, and from the just weighing of both to form an equitable judgment. Now I saw no bad. The sarcasm that had repelled, the harshness that had started me once, were only like keen condiments in a choice dish. Their presence was pungent, but their absence would be felt so comparatively insipid. And as for the vague something, it was sinister or sorrowful, a designing or a desponding expression. That opened upon a careful observer, now and then in his eye, and closed again before one could fathom the strange depth partially disclosed. That something which used to make me fear and shrink, as if I had been wandering amongst the volcanic-looking hills, and suddenly felt the ground quiver, and seen it agape. That something I, at intervals, beheld still, and with throbbing heart, but not with palsied nerves. Instead, I wished to shun, I longed only to dare, to divine it, and I thought Miss Ingram happy, because one day she might look into the abyss at her leisure, and explore its secrets and analyze their nature. Meantime, while I thought only of my master and his future bride, and saw only them, heard only their discourse, and considered only their movements of importance, the rest of the party was occupied with their own separate interests and pleasures. The ladies Lynn and Ingram continued to consort in solemn conferences, where they nodded their two turbans at each other and held up their hands in confronting gestures of surprise or mystery or horror, according to the theme on which their gossip ran, like a pair of magnified puppets. While Mrs. Dent talked with good nature, Mrs. Eshton and the two sometimes bestowed a courteous word or smile on me. George Lynn and Colonel Dent and Mr. Eshton discussed politics or county affairs or justice business. Lord Ingram flirted with Amy Eshton. Louisa played and sang to and with one of the Messers. Lynn and Mary Ingram listened languidly to the gallant speeches of the other. Sometimes all, as with one consent, suspended their by-play to observe and listen to the principal actors. For after all, Mr. Rochester and, because closely connected with him, Miss Ingram, were the life and soul of the party. He was absent from the room an hour. A perceptible dullness then seemed to steal over the spirits of his guests, and with his re-entrance was sure to give a fresh impulse to a vivacity of conversation. The want of his animating influence appeared to be particularly felt one day, that he had been summoned to Millcote on business, and was not likely to return till late. The afternoon was wet. A walk the party had proposed to take to see a gypsy camp, lately pitched on a common beyond Hay, was consequently deferred. Some of the gentlemen were gone to the stables. The younger ones, together with the younger ladies, were playing billiards in the billiard room. The dowagers Ingram and Lynn sought solace in a quiet game of cards. Blanche Ingram, after having repelled by a supercilious tenacity of some sorts of Mrs. Dent and Mrs. Eshton to draw her into conversation, had first murmured over some sentimental tunes and airs on the piano, and then, having fetched a novel from the library, had flung herself in haughty listlessness on a couch, and prepared to beguile, by the spell of fiction, the tedious hours of absence. The room and the house were silent. Only now and then the merriment of the billiard players was heard from above. It was verging on dusk, and the clock had already been given the warning of an hour to dress for dinner, when little Adele, who knelt by me in the drawing-room, suddenly exclaimed, "Voilà, Monsieur Rochester, que oui vient." I turned, and Miss Ingram darted forwards from her sofa. The others, too, looked up from their several occupations at the same time, and a crunching of wheels and a splashing tramp of horse hoofs became audible on a wet gravel. A post-chaise was approaching. "What can possess him to come home in that style?" said Miss Ingram. "He rode Monsieur, and did he not when he went out and Pilot was with him? What has he done with the animals?" As she said this, she approached her tall person and ample garments so near the window that I was obliged to bend back almost to the point of breaking my spine, and in her eagerness she did not observe me at first, but when she did, she curled her lip and moved to another casement. The post-chaise stopped. The driver rang the doorbell, and a gentleman alighted and attired in a traveling garb, but it was not Mr. Rochester. It was a tall, fashionable-looking man, a stranger. "Oh, how provoking!" exclaimed Miss Ingram. "You tiresome monkey," she said to Adele. "Who perched you up in the window to give false intelligence?" And she cast on me an angry glance, as if I were in fault. Some parleying was audible in the hall, and soon the newcomer entered. He bowed to Lady Ingram, as deeming her the eldest lady present. "It appears that I have come at an inopportune time, madam," he said, "when my friend Mr. Rochester is from home, but I arrive from a very long journey, and I think I may presume so far on old and intimate acquaintance as to install myself here until he returns." His manner was polite. His accent in speaking struck me as being somewhat unusual, not precisely foreign, but it was altogether English. His age might be about Mr. Rochester's, between 30 and 40. His complexion was singularly sallow. Otherwise, he was a fine-looking man, at first sight especially. On closer examination, you detected something in his face that displeased, or rather failed to please. His features were regular, but too relaxed. His eye was large and well cut, but the life looking out of it was tame, almost a vacant life. At least so I thought. The sound of the dressing bell dispersed the party. It was not till after dinner that I saw him again. He then seemed quite at ease, but I liked his physiognomy even less than before. It struck me as being at the same time unsettled and inanimate. His eye wandered, and he had no meaning in its wandering. This gave him an odd look, such as I never remembered to have seen. For a handsome and not unamiable-looking man, he repelled me quite exceedingly. There was no power in that smooth-skinned face of a full oval shape, no firmness in that aquiline nose and small cherry mouth. There was no thought on the low, even forehead, no command in that blank brown eye. And as I sat in my usual nook, I looked at him with the light of the grinolds on the mantelpiece beaming over him, for he occupied an armchair drawn close to the fire, and kept shrinking still nearer, as if he were cold. I compared him with Mr. Rochester. I think the contrast would be much greater between a sleek gander and a fierce falcon, between a meek sheep and the rough-coated, keen-eyed dog, its guardian. He had spoken of Mr. Rochester as an old friend. A curious friendship theirs must have been. A pointed illustration, indeed, of the great old adage that extremes meet. 2 or 3 of the gentlemen sat near him, and I caught at times scraps of their conversation across the room. At first I could not make much sense of what I heard, for the discourse of Louisa Eshton and Mary Ingram, who sat nearer to me, confused the fragmentary sentences that reached me at intervals. These last were discussing the stranger. They were both calling him a beautiful man, and Louisa said he was a love of a creature, and that she adored him, and Mary instanced it in his pretty little mouth and nice nose as her ideal of the charming. "Oh, and what a sweet-tempered forehead he has!" cried Louisa. "So smooth, none of those frowning irregularities that I dislike so much, and such a placid eye and a smile." And then, to my relief, Henry Lynn summoned them to the other side of the room to settle some point about the deferred excursion to Hay Common. I was now able to concentrate my attention on the group by the fire, and I presently gathered at the newcomer was called Mr. Mason. Then I learned that he was but just arrived in England, and that he came from some hot country, which was the reason, doubtless, that his face was so sallow, and that he sat so near the hearth and wore a surcoat in the house. Presently the words Jamaica, Kingston, Spanish Town indicated the West Indies in his residence, and it was with no little surprise that I gathered, ere long, that he had first seen and become acquainted with Mr. Rochester. He spoke of his friend's dislike of the burning heats and the hurricanes and the rainy seasons of that region. I knew Mr. Rochester to be a traveler. Mrs. Fairfax had said so, but I thought the continent of Europe had bounded his wanderings. Till now that I had never heard a hint given of visits to more distant shores. I was pondering these things when an incident, and a somewhat unexpected one, broke the thread of my musings. Mr. Mason, shivering as someone chanced to open the door, asked for more coal to be put on the fire, which had burnt out to its flame, though its mass of cinders still shone hot and red. The footman who brought coal, in going out, stopped near Mr. Eshton's chair and said something to him in a low voice, of which I heard only the words, "Old woman, quite troublesome." "Tell her that if she shan't be putting stocks, if she does not take herself off," he replied. "No, stop," interrupted Colonel Dent. "Don't send her away, Eshton. We might turn the thing to account. Better consult the ladies." And speaking aloud, he continued, "Ladies, do you talk of going to Hay Common to visit the gypsy camp? Sam here says that one of the old mother bunches is in the servants' hall at this moment, and insists upon being brought in before the quality to tell them of their fortunes. Would you like to see her?" "Oh, surely, Colonel," replied Lady Ingram. "Would you not encourage such a low impostor? Dismiss her by all means at once." "But I cannot persuade her to go away, my lady," said the footman, "nor can any of the servants. Mrs. Fairfax is with her just now, and entreating her to be gone, but she's taken a chair in the chimney-corner, and says nothing shall stir her from it till she gets leave to come in here." "What does she want?" asked Colonel. "To tell the gentry their fortunes. She says, ma'am, that she swears that she must and will do it." "Well, what is she like?" inquired Mrs. Eshton in a single breath. "Well, she is a shockingly old creature, miss, almost as black as a crock." "Why, she's a real sorceress," cried Frederick Lynn. "Let us have her in, of course." "Oh, to be sure," rejoined his brother. "It would be 1,000 pities to throw away such a chance of fun." "Oh, my dear boys, what are you talking about?" exclaimed Miss Lynn. "I cannot possibly countenance any such inconsistent proceeding," chimed in the Dowager Ingram. Indeed, mamma, but you can and will, pronounced the haughty voice of Blanche as she turned round on the piano stool, where till now she had sat silent, apparently examining the sundry sheets of music. I have a curiosity to hear my fortune told. Therefore, Sam, order the bedlam forward. My darling Blanche, please recollect. I do recollect that all you can suggest, and I must have a will. Quick, Sam. Yes, 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 cried all the juveniles, both ladies and gentlemen. Let her come, and it will be an excellent sport. The footman still lingered. She looks like a tough one, he said. Go! Ejaculated Miss Ingram, and the man went. Excitement instantly seized the whole party. A running fire of raillery and jests was proceeding when Sam returned. She won't come now, he said. She says it's not her mission to appear before the vulgar herd, as she had said. I must show her into a room by herself, and then those who wish to consult her must go in one by one. You see now, my queenly Blanche, began Lady Ingram. She encroaches. Be advisable, my dear angel, and show her to the library, of course, cut in the angel girl. It is not my mission to listen to her before the vulgar herd. Either I mean to have her all to myself, and there is a fire in the library, I presume. Yes, ma'am, but she looks like such a tinkler. Oh, cease that chatter, and do my bidding. Again Sam vanished, and mystery, animation, and expectation rose to the full flow once more. She's ready now, said the footman as he reappeared. She wishes to know who will be her first visitor. I think I better just have a go look upon her myself before any of the ladies go, said Colonel Dent. Tell her, Sam, a gentleman is coming. Sam went and returned. Oh, she says, sir, that she'll have no gentleman, that they need not trouble themselves to come near her, nor, he added with difficulty, suppressing a titter, any ladies either, except the young and the single. By Jove, she has taste, exclaimed Henry Lynn. Miss Ingram rose solemnly. Well, I will go first, she said, in a tone which might have befitted the leader of a forlorn hope, mounting a breach in the van of his men. Oh, be my best, my dearest. Oh, pause, reflect, was her mamma's cry, but she swept past her in a stately silence, and passed through the door which Colonel Dent held open, and we heard her enter the library. A comparative silence then ensued. Lady Ingram thought it l'efficace to wring her hands while she was according, and Miss Mary declared that she felt for her part that she never dared venture, and Amy and Louisa Eshton tittered under their breath and looked a little frightened. The minutes passed very slowly. 15 were counted before the library door opened, and Miss Ingram returned to us through the arch. Would she laugh? Would she take it as a joke? All eyes met her with a glance of eager curiosity, and she met all eyes with one of rebuff and coldness. She looked neither flurried nor merry. She walked stiffly to her seat and took it in silence. Well, Blanche, said Lord Ingram. What did she say, sister? Asked Mary. And what did you think? How did you feel? Is she a real fortune-teller? Demanded Mrs. Eshton. Now, my good people, returned Miss Ingram, don't press upon me. Really, your organs of wonder and credulity are easily excited. You seem by the importance of all of you, my good mamma included, ascribed to this matter, absolutely to believe that we have a genuine witch in this house, who is in close alliance with the old gentleman. I have seen a gypsy vagabond, and she has practiced in her hackneyed fashion in the science of palmistry, and told me that what such people usually tell, and my whim is gratified. And now I think Mr. Eshton will do well to put the hag in the stocks tomorrow morning, as he had threatened. Miss Ingram took a book and leaned back in her chair, and so declined further conversation. I watched her for nearly half an hour. During all that time she never turned a page, and her face grew momentarily darker, more dissatisfied and more sourly expressive of disappointment. She had obviously not heard anything to her advantage, and it seemed to me, from her prolonged fit of gloom and taciturnity, that she herself, notwithstanding her professed indifference, attached undue importance to whatever revelations had been made of her. Meantime, Mary Ingram, Amy, and Louisa Eshton declared that they dared not go alone, and yet they all wished to go. A negotiation was opened through the medium of the ambassador, Sam, and after much pacing to and fro, till I think that said Sam's calves must have been ached with exercise, permission was at last, with great difficulty, extorted from the rigorous Sibyl, for the three to wait upon her in a body. Their visit was not so still as Miss Ingram's had been. We heard hysterical giggling and little shrieks proceeding from the library, and at the end of about 20 minutes they burst the door open and came running across the hall as if they were half scared out of their wits. "Oh, I am sure that she is something not right," she cried, and one and all they all said, "She told us such things, and she knows all about us." And they sank breathless into various seats. The gentleman hastened to bring them. Pressed for no further explanation, they declared and informed them of what they most wished for. Here the gentleman interposed with earnest petitions to be further enlightened on those two last named points, but they only got blushes, ejaculations, tremors, and titters in return for their importunity. The matrons meantime offered vinaigrettes and wielded fans, and again reiterated the expression of their concern that their warning had not been taken in time. And then the gentlemen laughed, and the younger urged their services on the agitated fair ones. In the midst of the tumult, and while my eyes and ears were fully engaged in the scene before me, I heard a hem close at my elbow, and I turned and saw Sam. "If you please, miss, the gypsy declares that there is yet another single lady in the room who's not yet seen, and she swears that she will not go until she has seen all. I thought it must be you, as there is no one else for it. What shall I tell her?" "Oh, well, I will go by all means," I answered, and I was glad of the unexpected opportunity to gratify my much excited curiosity, and I slipped out of the room, unobserved by any eye, for the company were gathered in one mass about the trembling trio that had just returned, and I closed the door quietly behind me. "If you like, miss," said Sam, "I'll wait in the hall for you, and if she frightens you, just call and I'll come in. Now, Sam, return to the kitchen. I'm not in the least afraid." Nor was I, but it was a good deal interested and quite excited. All right, here we go, another chapter. Chapter 19. The library looked tranquil enough as I entered it, and Sybil, if Sybil she were, was seated snugly enough in an easy chair at the chimney corner. She had on a red cloak and a black bonnet, or rather a broad-brimmed gypsy hat, and tied down with a striped handkerchief under her chin. An extinguished candle stood on the table, and she was bending over the fire and seemed reading in a little black book, like a prayer book, by the light of the blaze, and she muttered the words to herself as old women do, and while she read she did not desist immediately on my entrance. It appeared that she wished to finish a paragraph. I stood on the rug and warmed my hands, which were rather cold with sitting at a distance from the drawing-room fire. I felt now as composed as I ever did in my life. There was nothing indeed in a gypsy's appearance to trouble one's calm. She shut her book and slowly looked up. Her hat brim partially shaded her face, yet I could see as she raised it that it was a strange one. It looked all brown and black. Elf locks bristled out from beneath a white band which passed under her chin and came half over her cheeks, or rather jaws. Her eye confronted me at once, and with a bold, direct gaze. "Well, are you you're the one who needs the fortune told?" she said in a voice as described. "I don't care about it, Mother, and if you may please yourself, but I ought to warn you that I have no faith." "It is like your impotence to say so. I was expected it of you. I heard it was in your step as you crossed the threshold." "Did you? You've a quick ear." "I have, and a quick eye, and a quick brain." "You need them all in your trade." "I do, especially when I've customers like you to deal with. And why don't you tremble?" "I'm not cold." "Why don't you turn pale?" "I am not sick." "Why don't you consult my art?" "I'm not so silly." The old crone laughed under her bonnet and her bandage, and then she drew out a short black pipe, and lighting it began to smoke. Having indulged a while in this sedative, she raised her bent body and took the pipe from her lips, and while she gazed steadily at the fire, and then she said very deliberately, "You are cold, and you are sick, and you are silly." "Prove it," I rejoined. "I will, and in a few words. And if you are cold because you are alone, and no contact strikes the fire from you that is within you, you are sick because the beset of feelings, the highest and the sweetest given to man, and it keeps far away from you. You are silly because, suffer as you may, you will not beckon it to approach, nor will you stir one step to meet it where it waits you." She again put her short black pipe to her lips and renewed her smoking with vigor. "You might say that to almost anyone who knew and lived as a solitary dependent in a great house." "I might say to almost anyone, but would it be true if of almost anyone?" "In my circumstances?" "Yes, just so, in your circumstances. But find me another precisely placed as you are." "It would be easy to find you thousands." "You would scarcely find me one. And if you knew it, you are in a particular situation, and very near happiness. Yes, within reach of it. The materials are all prepared. There are only wants and movement to combine them, and chance laying that somewhat apart, let them be once approached, and bliss results." "I don't understand enigmas. I never could guess a riddle in my life." "Well, if you wish me to speak more plainly, show me your palm." "I must becross it with a spoon, shouldn't I?" "Oh, to be sure." And then I gave her a shilling, but she put it into an old stocking foot which she took out of her pocket, and having tied it round and returned it, she told me to hold out my hand, and I did. She approached her face to the palm and pored over it without touching it. "It is too fine," she said. "I can make nothing of such a hand as that, almost without lines. Besides, what is it in a palm? Destiny is not written there." "I believe you," I said. "No," she continued. "It is in the face, on the forehead, about the eyes, and the lines of the mouth. Kneel, and lift up your head." "Ah, so now you are coming to reality," I said as I obeyed her. "I shall begin to put some faith into you presently." I knelt within half a yard of her, and she stirred the fire, so that a ripple of light broke from the disturbed coal. The glare, however, as she sat, only threw her face into a deeper shadow. Mine it illuminated. "I wonder, what feelings did you have to come to see me tonight?" she said, and when she had examined me a while. "I wonder what thoughts are busy in your heart during all the hours you sit in yonder room with the fine people flitting before you like shapes in a magic lantern.
just as little sympathetic communion passing between you and some of them as if they were really mere shadows of human forms and not the actual substance.
I feel tired often, sleepy sometimes, but seldom sad.
Then you have some secret hope to buoy you up and please you with the whispers of the future.
Not I. The utmost I hope is, well, to save money enough out of my earnings to set up a school some day, and a little house rented by myself.
Ah, a mean nutriment for the spirit to exist on. And sitting in that window seat. Ah, you see, I know your habits.
You've learned them from the servants.
Ah, you think yourself sharp. Well, perhaps I have, to speak truth, that I have an acquaintance with one of them, Mrs. Poole.
I started to my feet when I heard the name. You have you? Thought I. There is a diabler in the business after all, then.
Oh, don't be alarmed, continued the strange being. She's a safe hand, is Miss Poole. Oh, close and quiet. Anyone may repose in confidence in her, but I was saying, sitting in that little window seat, do you think of nothing about your future school? Have you no present interest in the company who occupy the sofas and the chairs before you? Is there not one face you study, one figure whose movements you follow with least curiosity?
I like to observe all the faces and all the figures.
Ah, but do you never single one from the rest? Or it may be two?
I do frequently, when the gestures or the looks of a pair seem a telling tale. It amuses me to watch them.
Ah, what tale do you best hear, or best like to see?
Oh, I do not have much choice. They generally run on the same theme, courtship and a promise to end in the same catastrophe, marriage.
Ah, and you do not like that monotonous theme?
Positively. I don't care about it, and it is nothing to me.
Nothing to you? When a lady young and full of life and health, charming with beauty, and endowed with gifts of rank and fortune, sits and smiles in the eyes of a gentleman, you—
I what?
You know, and perhaps think well of it.
I don't know the gentleman here. I have scarcely interchanged a syllable with one of them, and as to thinking well of them, I consider some respectable and stately, and middle-aged, and others young, dashing, and handsome, and lively, but certainly they are all at liberty to be the recipients of those smiles they please, without my feeling disposed to consider the transaction of any moment to me.
You don't know the gentleman here? You have not exchanged a syllable with one of them? Will you say that to the master of the house?
He is not home.
A profound remark. A most ingenious quibble. He went to Millcote this morning, and will be back tonight or tomorrow. Does that circumstance exclude him from the list of your acquaintance? Blot him as if it were out of existence?
No, but I can't scarcely see what Mr. Rochester has to do with the theme that you have introduced.
I was thinking of ladies smiling in the eyes of gentlemen, and the late of so many tales have been shed into Mr. Rochester's eyes that they overflow like two cups filled to the brim. Have you never remarked that?
Mr. Rochester has the right to enjoy the society of his guests.
No question about his right, but have you never observed that, of all the tales told about the matrimony, that Mr. Rochester has been favoured with the most lively and the most continuous?
The eagerness of a listener quickens the tongue of a narrator. I said this rather to myself than to the gypsy, whose strange talk, voice, and manner had by this time wrapped me in a kind of dream. One unexpected sentence came from her lips after another, till I got involved in a web of mystification and wondered what unseen spirit had been sitting for weeks by my heart and watching its workings and taking record of my pulse.
Eagerness of a listener, repeated she. Yes, Mr. Rochester has sat by the hour, his ear inclined to the fascinating lips that took such delight in their task of communicating, and Mr. Rochester was so willing to perceive and looked so grateful for the pastime given him. Have you noticed this?
Grateful? I cannot remember detecting gratitude in his face.
Detecting? Oh, you have analyzed then. And what did you detect if not gratitude?
I said nothing at this.
Have you not seen love? Have you not? And looking forward, have you not seen him married and beheld his bride happy?
Not exactly. Your witch's skill is rather at fault sometimes.
What the devil have you seen, then?
Never mind. I came here to inquire, not to confess. Is it known that Mr. Rochester is to be married?
Yes, and to the beautiful Miss Ingram.
Shortly.
Well, appearances would warrant that conclusion, and no doubt they will be superlatively happy pair, but he must love such a handsome, noble, witty, accomplished lady, and probably she loves him, or, if not his person, at least his purse. I know she considers the Rochester estate eligible to the last degree, though, God pardon me, I told her something on the point about that an hour ago, which made her look wondrously grave. The corners of her mouth fell half an inch. I would advise her black-aviced suitor to look out. If another comes with a longer and clearer rent roll, he's dished.
But, mother, I did not come to hear about Mr. Rochester's fortune. I came to hear my own, and you have told me nothing of it.
Well, yes, your fortune is doubtful, and when I examined your face, one trait contradicted another. Chance has meted you a measure of happiness, and that I know. I knew it before I came here this evening. She has laid it carefully on one side for you. I saw her do it. It depends on yourself to stretch out your hand and take it up, but whether you do so is the problem I study. Kneel again on the rug.
Don't keep me long. The fire scorches me. I knelt as asked, and she did not stoop towards me, but only gazed, leaning back in her chair, and then she began to mutter.
The flame flickers in the eye. The eye shines like dew. It looks soft and full of feeling. It smiles at my jargon. It is susceptible impression that follows impression through clear spheres. Where it ceases to smile, it is sad, and unconscious lassitude weighs on the lid. That signifies melancholy, and resulted from loneliness. It turns from me. It will not suffer further scrutiny. It seems to deny by a mocking glance the truth of the discoveries that I have already made, to disown the charge both of sensibility and chagrin, its pride and reserve only to confirm me in my opinion. The eye is favorable. As to the mouth, it delights at times in laughter. It is disposed to impart all that the brain conceives, though I dare say it would be silent on much the heart experiences. Mobile and flexible, it was never intended to be compressed in an eternal silence of solitude. It is a mouth which should speak much and smile often and have human affection for its interlocutor. That feature, too, is propitious. I see no enemy to a fortunate issue but in the brow, and that brow professes to say that it can live alone and of self-respect, and circumstances require me to do so, and that it need not sell its soul to buy bliss, and that it has an inward treasure born with it, which can keep it alive at all extraneous delights should it be withheld or offered at a price that it cannot afford. The forehead then declares that reason sits firm and holds the reins, and that it will not let feelings burst away and hurry to the wild chasms. The passions may rage furiously, like true heathens as they are, and the desires may imagine all sorts of vain things, but judgment shall still have the last word in every argument, and the casting vote in every decision. Ooh, strong wind, earth rock. Yes, and fire may pass by, but I shall follow the guiding of that still small voice which interprets and dictates of consciousness. Yes, well said, Forehead. Your declaration shall be respected. I have formed my plans. Yes, right plans as I deem them, and in them I've attended to the claims of conscience and the counsels of reason. I know how soon youth will fade and bloom and perish if the cup and the bliss offered, but one dreg of shame or one favor of remorse were detected, and I do not want sacrifice, sorrow, dissolution, but such is not my taste. I wish to foster, not to blight, to earn gratitude, not to wring tears of blood, no, nor of brine. My harvest will be in smiles and endearments and sweet. That will do. I think I rave in a kind of exquisite delirium. I should wish now to protract this moment ad infinitum, but I dare not. So far that I have governed myself thoroughly, and I have acted as inwardly swore as I would act, but further might try to be beyond my strength. Rise, Miss Eyre, leave me, and the play is played out. Where was I? Did I wake or sleep? Had I been dreaming? Did I dream soon? The old woman's voice had changed suddenly. Her accent, her gesture, all were familiar to me as my own face, and in a glass as the speech of my own tongue. I got up but did not go. I looked, and I stirred the fire. I looked again, but she drew her bonnet and her bandage closer about her face, and again beckoned me to depart. The flame illuminated her hand, and it was stretched out, roused now, and on alert for discoveries. I at once noticed that hand. It was no more the withered limb of than that of my own. It was a rounded, supple member, with smooth fingers and symmetrically turned. A broad ring flashed in the little finger, and stooping forward I looked at it and saw a gem that I had seen hundreds of times before. Again I looked at the face, which was no longer turned on me, and on the contrary, the bonnet was doffed, the bandage displaced, and the head advanced. "Well, Jane, do you know me?" asked the familiar voice. "Only take off the red cloak, sir, and then—" "But the string is in a knot. Help me." "Break it, sir." "There, then. Off ye lendings." And Mr. Rochester stepped out of his disguise. "Now, sir, what a strange idea." "But well carried out, eh? Don't you think so?" "With the ladies you must have managed well." "Ah, but not with you." "You did not act the character of a gypsy with me." "What character did I act? My own?" "No, some unaccountable one. In short, I believe that you have been trying to draw me out, or you have been talking nonsense to make me talk nonsense. It is scarcely fair, sir." "Oh, do you forgive me, Jane?" "I cannot tell till I have thought it all over. If on reflection I find that I have fallen into a great absurdity, I shall try to forgive you, but it was not right." "Oh, you have been very correct and very careful, very sensible." I reflected and thought on the whole. It was a comfort, but indeed I had been on my guard almost from the beginning of the interview. Something of masquerade that I suspected. I knew gypsies and fortune-tellers did not express themselves as the seemingly old woman had expressed herself. Besides, I had noted her feigned voice, her anxiety to conceal her features, but my mind had been running on Grace Poole, that living enigma, that mystery of mysteries, as I had considered her. I had never thought of Mr. Rochester. "Well," he said, "what are you musing about? What does that grave smile signify?" "Well, wonder and self-congratulation, sir. I have your permission to retire now, I suppose." "No, no, stay a moment, and tell me what the people in the drawing-room yonder are doing." "Discussing the gypsy, I dare say." "Ah, sit down.
Let me hear what they said about me. I had better not stay long, sir. It must be near 11 o'clock. Oh, you are aware, Mr. Rochester, that a stranger has arrived here since you left this morning. A stranger? No. Who can it be? I expected no one. Is he gone? No. He said that he has known you long, and that he would take the liberty of installing himself here till you returned. The devil he did! Did he give his name? His name is Mason, sir, and he comes from the West Indies, from Spanish Town in Jamaica, I believe. Mr. Rochester was standing near me. He had taken my hand as if to lead me to a chair, and as I spoke he gave my wrist a convulsive grip, and the smile on his lips froze, apparently a spasm caught in his breath. Mason? The West Indies? He said, in the tone that might fancy a speaking automaton to enunciate its single words. Mason. The West Indies? He reiterated, and went over the syllables 3 times, growing in the intervals of speaking whiter than ashes. He hardly seemed to know what he was doing. Do you feel ill, sir? I inquired. Oh, Jane, I've got a blow, Jane. He staggered. Oh, lean on me, sir. Jane, you've offered me your shoulder once before. Let me have it now. Yes, sir. Yes, and my arm. He sat down and made me sit beside him. Holding my hand in both his, he chafed it, gazing on me at the same time with the most troubled and dreary look. My little friend, he said, I wish I were in a quiet island with only you and trouble and the danger and the hideous recollections removed from me. Can I help you, sir? I'd give my life to serve you. Jane, if aid is wanted, I will seek it at your hands. I promise you that. Thank you, sir. Tell me what to do, and I'll try at least to do it. Fetch me now, Jane, a glass of wine from the dining room. They will be at supper there, and tell me if Mason is with them, and what he is doing. And with this I went and found all the party in the dining room at supper, as Mr. Rochester had said. They were not seated at the table. The supper was arranged on the sideboard, and each had taken what he had chosen, and they stood about here, and in their groups, their plates and their glasses in their hands, everyone seemed in high glee. Laughter and conversation were general and animated. Mr. Mason stood near the fire, and talking to the colonel and Mrs. Dent, and appeared as merry as any of them. I filled a wine glass, and then I returned to the library. Mr. Rochester's extreme pallor had disappeared, and he looked once more firm and stern. He took the glass from my hand. Here is to your health, ministrant spirit, he said, and he swallowed the contents and returned to me. What are they doing, Jane? Laughing and talking, sir. They don't look grave and mysterious, as if they had heard something strange. Not at all. They are full of jests and gaiety. And Mason? Well, he was laughing too. If all these people came in a body and spat at me, what would you do, Jane? Turn them out of the room, sir, if I could. He half smiled. But if I were to go to them, and they only looked at me coldly and whispered sneeringly amongst each other, and then dropped off and left me one by one, what then? Would you go with them? I rather not think, sir. I would have more pleasure in staying with you. To comfort me? Yes, sir, to comfort you as well as I could. And if they laid you under a ban for adhering to me? I probably should you know nothing about their ban, and if I did, I should care nothing about it. Then you dare censure for my sake? I could dare it for the sake of any friend who deserved my adherence, as you do, and I am sure you do. Go back now into the room, and step quietly up to Mason, and whisper into his ear that Mr. Rochester is come, and wishes to see him. Show him in here, and then leave me. Yes, sir. I did his behest, and the company all stared at me as I passed straight among them. I sought Mr. Mason, and delivered him the message, and preceded him from the room. I ushered him into the library and then went upstairs. At a late hour after I had been in bed some time, I heard the visitors repair to their chambers. I distinguished Mr. Rochester's voice, and I heard him say, "This way, Mason. This is your room." He spoke cheerfully. The gay tones set at my ease of my heart. I was soon asleep. Ooh, who is Mr. Mason? We're going to find out, but that will be another time for tomorrow. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to more of Jane Eyre. And if you want to find out what happens next, please join me again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I do stream regularly and frequently. And if you have liked what you've heard, please feel free to like, subscribe, or follow. I do stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. So if that's one of the platforms that you like, please feel free to follow me on one of those, as it allows you to get notifications when I get live, as well as any future videos that I post or create. So with that being said, I hope you guys had fun tonight, and I hope to see you tomorrow. And remember to always stay safe